Yo, what's good my great sages? It's your host Seiji Samurai here, now here today to bring y'all a new what if. This being the what if movie to what if Asta had Shadow's abilities. Yes, I know that I've already done this what if and made it into an entire series, but I decided to combine the two parts and make a full on what if movie. So that way you guys are able to watch it all together, and I did promise I would do this, so here it is. I really hope you guys do enjoy, as now with that being said, it's your host Seiji Samurai, and it's time to begin. So with that being said, let's get started.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright, so to begin the what if, we're now going to begin with Asta's childhood. Dating way back, all the way up to the point where Asta would be at the age of 7, we see him still living in Hodge Village along with Yuno and the rest of the kids at the orphanage. However, even at this young age, we would already see clear signs of Asta's personality being different compared to how it was in the main timeline. As although during this time Asta is still being helpful and caring to the people of the orphanage, we will see him doing it in a very different way compared to how he does it usually in the main timeline, as Asta does all this through his actions alone and says nothing else. As whenever he sees that the kids were crying or they got injured, Asta would be the first one to get a first aid kit. Or whenever he sees that the kids were hungry, he would be the first one to make a meal for them. Or whenever he sees that Father Orsi or Sister Lily were stressed out about something, Asta would take on the entire task that they were doing by himself. As basically Asta would be doing this all as a way to show affection towards them, since he didn't want them to get hurt, to get injured. Overall, he just wanted to take away all their problems. Which, due to all of this combined, this will cause Asta to get into quite a few wholesome yet comedic moments, as whenever they found out that Asta was doing stuff like this, or whenever they see Asta doing stuff like this, they would usually half the time, if not all the time, shower Asta with the affection, like giving him a generous group hug or making him his favorite meals and everything, causing Asta to be embarrassed and flustered about the whole thing, but nonetheless happy about it, as overall it just led to a pretty good life at the orphanage. But the thing is, that was only Asta at the orphanage, as outside of it Asta was already showing clear signs of being way different compared to his canon counterpart. As if you thought that before he was showing like different signs and everything, outside of it he was just completely a different person, as he was straightforward and uncaring to almost anyone outside of it. As literally when it comes to like people in general, Asta was actually shown to be quite rude to them, or what some people would say was rude, but really it was just Asta being straightforward. He had no care for their emotions or anything like that. He didn't care about the type of situation that they were in, and he most of all did not tolerate assholes. As whenever someone really chose to get into a fight with Asta, Asta would gladly finish the fight, basically making sure that no one messes with the kids of the orphanage, no one messes with his siblings, and overall no one messes with him, as Asta was taking shit from nobody. But yeah, that would be mostly Asta's personality throughout the time of him being the age of 7, but this is where we also see something else being particularly interesting of this timeline. As in this timeline, even though Asta was at such a young age, he would actually be shown to have the ability to use magic. But the most surprising thing about it was the fact that the type of magic that Asta was using was a mystery. As so far overall, the only thing that Asta was able to understand of his magic was the fact that he was able to move super fast. And I mean so fast that literally he was a blur to most people. And not only that, but it also made Asta way stronger compared to the other kids, as even at this young age of 7, Asta's strength was comparable to that of an adult male, causing many people to be baffled by him, but also impressed. As with these abilities, Asta is able to actually help out much more around the orphanage and also the village, causing him to become quite popular besides his tough personality. Oh, and for those wondering exactly what is Asta's dream throughout this timeline, we'd actually see that in this timeline, Asta's dream is to become the Wizard King, but this time he has a much more in-depth plan about exactly why he wants to become the Wizard King. As the main reason why he wants to become Wizard King in this timeline is in order to give the commoners a better life and also to fix the corrupt system, as Asta has seen the world for what it truly is. As sometimes whenever he gets sent out on certain grocery missions and stuff like that, he oftentimes runs into quite a few corrupt nobles. And Asta, he doesn't hesitate, he beats the living crap out of them. And sure, this does give him a couple of repercussions and even getting in trouble with Father Orsi, but at the end of the day, Asta doesn't care. As in Asta's eyes, everyone was made equal. All of them were humans at the end of the day, which means that all of them should be treated equally. As in Asta's eyes, it didn't matter how much more money someone had or how much more magic they had, as literally over time anyone can become successful. All it takes is for them to actually work hard and put in effort. and that was something that Asta wanted to show to everyone once he's able to fix the corrupt system. But now that I caught you guys up on who exactly Asta is throughout this timeline, this is where we're now going to flash forward to when Asta is at the age of 8. Now turning to Asta currently at the age of 8, you'll see him currently right now watching Yuno, as he had just been sent out on his own to go do deliveries. Something that Asta was usually the one to do so, but since Father Orsi wanted to help out Yuno when it came to confidence, he decided to let Yuno do it. And Asta, feeling worried about his younger brother, or at least in Asta's eyes, his younger brother, he decided to continue looking after him, but in the shadows. So that way Yuno was able to gain confidence and not know that he was there. But unfortunately, it seems as if Asta's bad feeling was right, as after Yuno had done the delivery, he would then be suddenly bumped into by a drunken man, as the man stole Yuno's pendant and just began to mock him. Yuno, although Asta would give him credit, actually tried to fight back for the pendant, but unfortunately he just wasn't strong enough, as the man made Yuno actually cry and break down, all the while he just continued on laughing and just walking away with Yuno's pendant. And that was enough to cause Asta to snap. As now quickly turning our attentions to Yuno, as we end up seeing him still on the ground crying, this is where he would then suddenly feel a ginormous burst of wind blow past him, causing him to then suddenly look up to see something shocking. As casually right now, walking towards him with his pendant will be none other than Asta. But you see, at that moment, Yuno wasn't really paying attention to Asta. No, he was paying attention to the drunken man, the one that had just recently stole his pendant. As somehow, someway, in literally a blink of an eye, heck, not even a blink of an eye, moving so fast that Yuno didn't even have time to register, Asta had somehow, some way, not only did he get his pendant back, but he completely brutally beat down the guy. The guy's entire face was literally purple, it looked swollen, overall the guy didn't even look human anymore. As seeing this right in front of him, Yuno would be left speechless, all the while Asta would continue walking towards him before eventually giving him back his pendant. And then soon after, Asta would begin to go on a whole rant, scolding Yuno for going out by himself, letting him know that he should have had someone next to him throughout the entire time. And after getting scolded by Asta and seeing this is when suddenly he would then burst into tears once again, causing Asta to immediately begin to let up and everything, since he didn't mean to make Yuno feel bad, he was just worried for him. But Yuno, after seeing how right Asta was, he would actually begin to cry, as he just feels bad for himself, wondering why exactly was he so weak. As Asta seeing Yuno break down and everything, he would try encouraging him, as he ended up telling Yuno that there was nothing wrong with starting off weak, as after all, it didn't matter exactly where you start off at, anyone can become strong. And after getting these words of advice from Asta, this one suddenly he would then stop crying, as then soon after, this is when Yuno would then tell Asta that he wants to grow stronger. And then he says that once he's strong enough, he would then become the Wizard King. And Asta, after hearing this, he would then be actually shocked into silence before suddenly smirking, as he then tells Yuno that unfortunately that was not going to happen, since he was going to become the Wizard King. As right here, right now, this would be the moment where both Asta and Yuno would become rivals. As right after this moment, we will then see the two of them then decide to head back to the orphanage, but you'll see along the way there, we will see Yuno currently right now deep in thought, as he just wonders something. Just how the heck was Asta able to move so fast? I didn't even know where he was going. Did he grow stronger? Did he grow faster? Those would be the thoughts that will be swimming inside Yuno's head, as usually half the time when Asta would move super fast and everything, at least Yuno was able to tell exactly where Asta was gonna go, since it was pretty obvious. Sure, he was not able to predict where Asta was going all the time, but at least sometimes he was able to do so. But ever since Asta had turned the age of 8, it was literally impossible. As if Yuno was not constantly trailing Asta all the time, he would have no idea exactly where Asta was going. As half the time Yuno thought that Asta's magic had upgraded to teleportation. As all this combined would cause Yuno to wonder exactly how strong Asta would be in the future. As just thinking about it would cause Yuno to then suddenly feel excited, since he knows that in order to become the Wizard King, he would have to surpass Asta. And that looks like it was going to be a long journey ahead, but Yuno was willing to go to the training for it. All the while this was going on in Yuno's head, turning to Asta, we would actually see that during this time, he would realize that he would actually have to double the training that he was doing. As you see, before then, Asta had been training secretly, but the thing is, now that he has Yuno as a rival, Asta has to train himself even harder. Not only because he had a rival, but also because of the fact that we would actually see that Asta's magic energy was growing at a rapid rate, so fast that Asta was having a hard time keeping up. As if you guys didn't know, the more magic that he had, the harder it was to control. That's literally the reason why Asta has been training, even though he's already at such a young age. As now with this is where we now end up doing a time skip. Flashing forward to when both Asta and Yuno are at the age of 15, we will see both of them as currently right now they'll be at the grimoire ceremony, just like the main timeline would be at during this point. But you see, this is where we then see something particular happen, as this will be right after Yuno ends up receiving the 4-leaf grimoire. Asta was there at the event alongside Yuno, just casually watching his rival get his 4-leaf grimoire as he declares that he's going to become the Wizard King, with everyone cheering him on and many of them looking at him with scorn. Although Asta would just be there shaking his head, as after all he knows that he's the one who's going to become Wizard King. However, while Asta was thinking like this is when suddenly a pressure would then befall upon the entirety of the grimoire ceremony, as this pressure was so strong that it shook up the entirety of the building and caused everyone there to stop moving, except for one person, this being Asta. As Asta, feeling this pressure, would then suddenly look up casually, and when he does, he would then see it. Casually floating down to Asta will be none other than a grimoire, as soon one by one people began to look up at it as they all felt the ominous magic. No, in fact they could see it. They could see the black and red energy just swirling off the grimoire as they actually shook up the entirety of the building, causing many of them to wonder just who was going to be receiving this grimoire. And soon they would find out their answer relatively quickly, as the grimoire would land right into the hands of Asta. As Asta would look at this grimoire before looking at the clover it had, with it having a 5-leaf clover. Now this will cause Asta to have multiple amounts of question, all the while everyone else will be looking at Asta wondering just what type of monster was he? What type of magic did he wield? As Asta looking at this will be quite confused, but also he would have a look of curiosity, wondering exactly what it was capable of. But unfortunately for right now, he didn't really have time to explore, as finally the pressure would then be released, allowing people to move freely as the rest of the grimoire ceremony would then continue on. As we now do both a time skip as well as a change of scenes. So now from this point on, I'm going to be flashing forward through a couple of the events that go by, mostly because of the fact that these events do not change too much from the main timeline or hold no significant value whatsoever, meaning if this scene was removed, it's not really going to play a big part to the whole story. And also another thing, for those wondering exactly why did Asta get the 5-leaf grimoire and all that stuff, it's because of the fact that in this timeline, the 5-leaf grimoire actually has magic, and because Asta has magic as well, both of them end up connecting with each other. So that's literally the logical reason. Just like how in the old timeline, Asta had gotten the grimoire because they connected, because Asta was the right wielder for it. In this timeline, it's the same thing, except Asta has magic and the grimoire holds magic as well that specifically connects with Asta. But if you guys understand all that, let's go ahead and continue on with the story, as I'm gonna now, skim through the events that go by. So now first, turning to when both Asta and Yuno end up exiting out of the grimoire ceremony, we will then see them encounter both the nobles and then later on the chain mage, to which they're able to defeat them relatively easily, as do note they're obviously way stronger compared to how they were in the main timeline. And if that wasn't enough, for the next few months that go by, we will then see both Asta and Yuno then train up, as this will be as a way to prepare for the Magic Knight entrance exams. As for the next few months that go by, we will see them just continuously train themselves, as eventually by the time they finally turn 16, we will then see them then head off to the testing location, as it was a pretty difficult journey up ahead, but eventually they ended up arriving there a-okay. As once they ended up arriving, they will then be put through some trials, as a way to showcase how powerful they were and also display their abilities. As we end up seeing both Asta and Yuno end up succeeding in different areas, before eventually it will be finally time for the final exam, this being the 1v1 matches. As this is where we will then see things change up compared to how it was in the main timeline, as we now do a change of scenes. Quickly shifting our attention to Asta, we will then see him as he'll be casually there leaning against a wall as he sees Yuno finally finish up his opponent. As by this point now, Yuno had finally completed the test and was now going to do the evaluation. We see other fights then begin to go on here and there, nothing that really caught Asta's attention, before eventually a noble would then suddenly grab Asta harshly by the shoulder, letting him know that both of them were going to face off against each other. But unfortunately for the noble, this will be his biggest mistake, as Asta, after just feeling the noble touch him and after seeing how the noble was reacting and everything, this will cause him to literally grow quiet, as he tells the noble to just get to the center of the arena, causing the noble to get angry at the fact that Asta was giving him orders. But nonetheless, they end up getting to the center of the arena as they prepare to fight to face off against each other, with the noble arrogantly telling Asta that he stood no chance. As soon after the proctor would then arrive as well, this is when he would then tell the fight to begin, as the noble will then suddenly begin to reveal his earth magic as he tries to use it in order to crush Asta, as he just summons a generous boulder and shoots at Asta, expecting it to hit him, only to then be surprised, as in the very next instant, moving so fast that he couldn't even react, the noble actually found himself get slammed into the wall as he couldn't even register the fact that he was in pain. Like legit, all he felt was a generous burst of wind, and next thing you know, he felt himself in the wall. Although everyone else would just be there looking on in shock, as Asta would still be there in the arena, acting as if he didn't move at all. As this would cause many of them to wonder, did Asta do anything? Was it some interference from the outside? As legit, Asta remained untouched. There was not even a little bit of dirt on his clothing. But unfortunately, nonetheless, the noble, after realizing that he had been injured and everything, he realized that there was nothing he could do, as that would be the last thought he had in mind right before he fell into unconsciousness. As legit, in such a small and short instance, Asta had obliterated that man. As quickly turning to the captains, we would see all of them having varying degrees of reactions, as all of them were surprised. As they wonder if maybe there was like some type of like outside interference, or maybe it had something to do with Asta's magic, but you could see that there was one person reacting differently, this being Yami. As you see casually right now, watching the entirety of the match from the very beginning to the end of it, even though it was so short, we will see that currently right now, Yami's knees were actually shaking a little bit, as we see him actually trying to calm down while smoking, as he will be deep in thought. His ki. The entirety of that time, he moved so fast. His ki was at such a rapid rate that I couldn't even track it. Just who is this kid? As just thinking about it would cause Yami to then smirk, as he was actually shaking from excitement, as he now most definitely wanted Asta to be a part of his squad. As now with those thoughts in mind, as these events would come to an end, this is where we now turn to the evaluation, as just like the main timeline, we see Yuno joining with the Golden Dawn, although Asta ends up joining with the Black Bulls. And the main reason why is because the fact that Asta got no hands at all besides the Black Bulls, and the main reason why behind that is because of the fact that many of them were very skeptical of Asta's abilities, since they didn't really get a clear display of it throughout the entirety of the exams, mostly because of the fact that Asta was doing it in a way that was just not like the normal way that most people would do it, causing many of them to think that Asta might be a fraud, or the fact that he had some type of outside interference, which was obviously not permitted, but unfortunately there was no way they could actually prove it. So the best they can do is just not offer him a spot on their squad, and that was it. But unfortunately, it seems as if Yami had other ideas, concerning the fact that he literally, allowed Asta to join the Black Bulls, to which Asta obviously ends up accepting this. As now with this is where we can now move on with the story, and just to let you guys know about a few key details here, just to let you know, Nero is still tagging along with Asta in this timeline, and this is mostly due to the fact that Asta in this timeline still has the 5-leaf Grimoire. Just letting you guys know, and just to have you guys keep that in mind as we now move on with the story. So now flashing forward to the first few weeks after Asta had joined the Black Bulls, we end up seeing a majority of the events that play out in the main timeline play out nearly the exact same way, with a couple of differences here and there. This being the fact that, first of all, during the baptism, Asta is able to pass, obviously, but the way that he does it is obviously going to be very different. As in this timeline, Asta just uses his speed as a way to dodge all of Magma's attacks, but the way that he does it is in a way that makes it to where basically to the Black Bulls, it seems as if Asta is literally phasing through Magma's attacks, which it was enough to impress them to the point where they allowed Asta to join. And if that wasn't enough, Asta had the luxury of meeting Noel, to which in this timeline the interaction between the two did not go exactly as it did in the main timeline, with Noel actually bursting into tears by the fact that Asta, because of the fact that he did not really rock with nobles like that, he straight up just insulted Noel to the point where she legit got angry at him, shot a spell, and just missed, and in fact just hit Magma instead. Now this will cause her to feel embarrassed and angry as she just runs away crying, although Asta would just be there completely ignoring how she was feeling at the moment. Although later on Asta did end up encountering Noel, and those events end up playing out, as at the end of the day the same thing ends up happening. Asta ends up saving Noel, and Noel ends up gaining a crush on Asta, although Asta is quite oblivious to it. And not only that, but also the interaction between the two is going to be going quite differently, as instead of Noel just insulting Asta and all that stuff, she's actually looking up to Asta and actually treating him with respect and everything, as she goes out of her way to make sure that Asta understands that she's being respectful towards him and everything, to which although Asta is quite annoyed at it, that means that so far she's the noble that he tolerates the most so far. And this was not the only thing that happened during those first few weeks, as during this time, Asta had spent most of it just simply going on different missions as a means to gain money and also to train himself. As once he ends up getting the money, he ends up sending it directly to Hajj Village, as after all, this was just Asta's first step when it comes to achieving his dream. As after all, he first needs to make sure that, his family is living much more comfortably. To which obviously that's why he's going to be sending as much money as he possibly can and take on as much missions. Now during this time, after the first few weeks would go by, we would then see Asta then get sent out on a mission along with Magma and Noel, as the main reason behind this because of the fact that just like in the main timeline, Magma and Yami had lost a bet, so that meant that Asta and Noel are getting the consequences for it. But it didn't really matter much to Asta, as he was still going to get paid for it. So after getting sent to Soshi, which is Magma's village, we actually see Asta take care of it pretty easily. As with his speed and strength, Asta's able to take care of the boars like it's no problem, causing both Noel and Magma to be quite impressed. As Magma will begin to ask Asta exactly how was he so fast, asking him if he was using magic in order to boost it, with Noel asking exactly how Asta got so much control over his magic. And Asta just hearing about this actually scowled, causing Noel to panic, considering the fact that the truth is, when it comes to control, Asta was not exactly having the best time. But right before Asta can begin to explain to them about his ability and stuff like that, this is when suddenly they will then be interrupted as suddenly smoke begins to fill in the entirety of Magma's village. And Asta seeing this, obviously being the fastest, would then begin to disappear, causing Magma and Noel to panic as they then rush over there to the village, while also realizing that Asta, honestly, he could have taken them with him, but instead he just left them behind. But nonetheless, they continue on to Magma's village, as Asta would be the first one to arrive there. As we now end up doing a quick change of scenes. We see Asta as he ends up quickly arriving there, as he ends up seeing Heath and his men, as they will be currently right now threatening the villagers and the village chief. As the village chief will be there trying his best to defend the civilians, but you could see that, he's not exactly as young as he used to be, as he was struggling incredibly hard with them. And Asta seeing this would then begin to grow angry, especially when he sees Heath uncaringly then summon a ginormous shard, as he then shoots it directly at the village chief, as he tries to go ahead and kill him, only for Asta to go ahead and intervene, as he ends up putting a stop to the attack immediately. And Heath seeing Asta, he would then sigh, as he begins to mutter something about, being off track, before eventually turning to Asta, asking him if he knows what the magic stone is. And Asta tells him that he doesn't, with Heath sighing, telling Asta that he should just get out of his way, letting Asta know that it was no point of him actually wasting his time with people like them. And this will cause Asta to immediately begin to grow angry, asking Heath what he meant. As Heath begins to insult commoners and basically saying that Asta, being of a higher status and being a magic knight, shouldn't get involved with those as pathetic as commoners, saying as they're nothing more but a waste of resources. And Asta, after hearing this from Heath, this is where we would then see him then grow completely silent, as there will be a shadow covering his face, as this is when he would then ask Heath if he truly meant that. "You really believe what you just said? You believe every single word?" Asta would say, as you could actually feel his magic begin to generate. As because Asta's magic was generating, you could actually see the villagers behind Asta actually tense up, as Heath and his men, not realizing the situation they were in, would then continue on, as Heath would once again tell Asta, "Yes, they're nothing more but a waste of resources, and it shouldn't matter to someone of your prestige about what happens to them." As after saying these words, Heath will then summon out a ginormous shard, as he intends to actually stab it into the villagers and to finally finish them off, only for him to then suddenly be cut off by a burst of magic. As Asta, after hearing the most outrageous thing he has heard in a while, this is when he would then begin to reveal his eyes, only to see that Asta's eyes had turned red. As Asta then calmly tells Heath and his men that he's going to destroy them. As suddenly, now moving so fast that none of them are able to react, Asta will be shown single-handedly dealing with them, but you see the way that Asta goes about it would be surprising. As using his speed, Asta begins to actually move around them so fast to the point where it actually makes a whole tornado basically, as Heath and his men will be caught up in it, as this tornado will begin to grow inside the entirety of the village, causing the ginormous smoke that was around the area to then be dismissed, as it will be absorbed into the ginormous tornado. As by the time that Asta was finally done with this attack, this is when we will then see Heath and his men, only to see that these guys took a ginormous amount of damage. As while Asta had made this generous tornado, inside of the tornado he had actually been beating them up one by one with his hand-to-hand combat obviously. As by the time that Heath and his men had finally been out of the tornado, you can see that they were unconscious. All while Asta would look at them coldly just as Magma as well as Noah would then arrive, only for them to realize that they were way too late and that Asta had taken care of the entire problem by himself. As we now end up doing another time skip. So now flashing forward to after the battle was over, we end up seeing Heath and his men once again, as by this point they were being captured by none other than Magma, who used his fire magic to restrain them. All the while Noel would be there in order to protect the civilians, and Asta just being there to really keep them in check, since at any moment if they try to do anything, Asta can stop it. But you see, that was not the only thing that Asta was doing, as unfortunately during this point Asta would be very deep in thought, mostly because of the fact that he realized one important thing. As after the battle was over, Asta realized just how destructive his magic truly was. As now quickly taking a good look around the surrounding area, we could see that Asta's attack, just due to the simple backlash of it, was enough to cause large amounts of damage to the village. As this caused many people to look at their homes as well as their shops in sadness, considering the fact of just how heavily damaged it was. And do mind you that this village was mostly meant for commoners and everything. None of them were really nobles. So I mean that they really couldn't pay this off as easily as nobles would be able to do so. And just thinking about this would cause Asta to feel very guilty, as he ends up making a mental note to give some of his money to the villagers here in order for them to fix up their houses and their shops and everything. But nonetheless, after this, we end up seeing most of the events that play out here remain mostly the same, as Heath and his men do end up offing themselves, as well Asta was in deep thought. They end up doing this secretly, causing Asta to have no chance to respond whatsoever. And not only that, but we also end up seeing Nero get the magic stone. As besides that, everything else would then continue on mostly the same, with the main difference here being the fact that the village chief was still alive. As now that I covered all the events that happened during this arc, I can now move on to the very next one, this being the dungeon exploration arc, as we now end up turning towards it. So now quickly beginning the arc, we end up turning to see Asta, as by this point now he has continued on with his regular daily routine, this being just training and going on missions in order to send money back to his village. But while Asta was doing this, he would then eventually get sent out on a mission along with Noel and Luck in order to explore a dungeon. As during this point we will see many of the events that happen here play out pretty similar to the main timeline. I'm not really going to get into too much detail about it, mostly because of the fact that, like I said, not much truly changes. As this will continue on all the way to the point where Asta as well as Noel would then soon encounter Yuno in the Golden Dawn, as by this point Luck had separated from them and decided to go off on his own to face off against some enemies. Now during this time of them meeting up, we will then see both Asta and Yuno catch up for a little bit as they begin to explain about the different adventures they gone on while being part of the Magic Knights, with Klaus chipping in once in a while trying to be part of the conversation and just to simply undermine the Black Bull's efforts. Not that Asta cared whatsoever, and Noel would also be there just simply talking to Mimosa but feeling very uncomfortable. As this will go on for a very solid minute before eventually they will then have to go their separate ways. But this is where we will then see something pretty interesting and something that does not follow the main timeline. As right after Asta and Yuno would then go their separate ways, and as Yuno would then go ahead and say that, both him and Asta are going to be competing to see who can get to the dungeon room first, this is where Klaus would then decide to chip in one last time. You think you can just ignore me? You Black Bulls really show no class whatsoever. It's no wonder that you scrape at the bottom of the barrels. Honestly, I feel as if your commoner brother should have joined you as well, as both of you are just one and the same. Klaus would say this as he goes ahead and just simply stick up his glasses, trying to act all smug and everything. But you see, Asta, when he heard this, he just stopped moving. And this is when Asta didn't simply look at Klaus, and the very first time since the entirety of Klaus being there, Asta finally acknowledged his presence. And the way that he acknowledged him made Klaus feel so much disgust, but for himself. As the way that Asta looked at him, it will be the same way that you look at a cockroach on the floor, like it's just nasty. As Asta just simply tells Klaus, I could give less of a damn about your opinion, and I don't care about your prestige Magic Knight ranking. If you believe so much in this status and this class of how society should work, then you're not fit to be a Magic Knight. As those will be the final words that Asta would say to Klaus before suddenly walking off, with Noel following along with him, saying goodbye to Mimosa, but you could see that she did not really want to do that. Now Klaus would be there just stumped and everything, as this is when Yuno then decides to speak up, telling Klaus that he got lucky. Wow, you must really have Lady Luck on your side, Yuno would say, with Klaus suddenly snapping out of his shock as he then turns to Yuno with a raised eyebrow, as Yuno would then calmly look at him. If you had at any moment during that conversation said one more word, then you most likely wouldn't be standing here a-okay. I doubt that even a mimosa could have healed you, Yuno would say, as the way that he said it with such seriousness actually unnerved Klaus before he tells Yuno to shut up and to just go to the dungeon room as they still had a mission to complete. As just like that, we would then see the Golden Dawn team then go on to complete their mission, as during this time we would just see like the events in the main timeline continue to play out. As we end up seeing Asta and Noel soon encounter / save Luck after his near-death battle, with both of them telling him to kind of stop being selfish and everything, causing Luck to then snap out of this, battle frenzy mode as he ends up apologizing to them. As then soon later on, they will then rush to their treasure room, but you see on the way there, this is when Asta then feels that something is off. As suddenly bursting with speed that neither Luck or Noel can keep up with, we will then see Asta then arrive at the treasure room, only to see something surprising. As the Golden Dawn team somehow someway got defeated by one mage, with the only one left standing being Yuno. But you see, in this timeline, Yuno actually is putting up a much better fight, as we end up seeing him face off against Mars and just, actually doing pretty good against him. But as Asta would continue looking at the fight, he could see that Yuno was just simply not going to be able to win against him. As while yes, Yuno was most definitely way stronger compared to how he was in the main timeline during this point, unfortunately he still wouldn't be able to beat Mars, mostly because of the fact that when it came to a battle of endurance, Yuno unfortunately fell short, and not only that, but Mars just simply had way more experience compared to Yuno. So that meant that Yuno unfortunately was not going to be able to last long, and Asta was able to see it. Especially with the way that he's able to see that Yuno was moving much slower, causing him to get hit a bunch more, and causing him to just simply begin slowly but surely losing focus in the battle. Basically, he's fading in and out of consciousness. And Asta was able to see all this, causing him to have no choice but to step in, just like he usually does. As once again moving so fast that no one's able to react, just as Yuno was about to get hit with a ginormous diamond blade, this is when suddenly Asta would then intervene, as he ends up destroying and shattering the diamond blade with his fist, as Yuno would be there watching all this with a tired expression. I could have done that myself, Yuno would say, with Asta looking at him with a "are you serious bruh" type of look, telling Yuno to just simply sit down and relax. But he does end up telling Yuno that he did grow strong, causing Yuno to smile right before he has no choice but to actually land on the ground as he feels exhausted. As now with Yuno being out of the fight and Noel and Luck finally arriving, this is where we end up seeing none other than both Asta and Mars finally face off against each other for the first time, as we now turn to the battle. Quickly shifting our attention to Asta, we end up seeing him as he'll be casually walking towards Mars, thinking nothing of it, not even seeing Mars as a threat. And Mars, seeing this, will try to tell Asta to not get in his way, letting him know that he will die if he does so, with Asta not responding. And Mars, once again feeling annoyed, this is when he would then straight up attack Asta, letting him know that this was his fault, with Asta seeing a ginormous amount of minerals just getting sent at him, as everyone would then tell him to dodge. But Asta once again doesn't react, and instead he just casually, without any hesitation, phases through the attack. And this ends up surprising everyone except for the members of the Black Bulls, considering the fact that they've seen Asta did this before when it came to the baptism with magma. So seeing Asta doing it again wasn't really that surprising, but still it was impressive. As even after a generous amount of assaults from minerals, Asta was shown to be completely fine, not even a little scratch on his clothing. As after this is when Asta would then finally end up appearing face to face with Mars, as this is when Asta then tells him very calmly that he was weak. And Mars hearing this, he just immediately begins to have some type of flashback, as hearing those words were enough to actually trigger him enough to the point where he just immediately begins to send out barrages of diamonds directly at Asta, trying to kill him. And Asta, seeing this, immediately without any hesitation begins to move at speeds that no one's able to track, as he's easily able to dodge out of the way of every single one of Mars's attack before suddenly appearing right behind him, telling him that he was too slow. And Mars, hearing this, once again got pissed off, as he would then suddenly form a ginormous mineral blade and try to hit Asta with it, only to be surprised along with everyone else. As Asta, instead of dodging like he usually does, he just calmly looks at the attack before suddenly we will then see a yellowish barrier then appear in front of him, instantly shattering the diamond blade and causing everyone to look at him in surprise, considering the fact that besides the speed, Asta didn't really display much about his abilities, even to Yuno. As now quickly turning our attention to Mars, we end up seeing him as he'll be surprised by the fact that Asta blocked his attack, but then he'll be even more surprised by the fact that in the palm of Asta's hand, there will be a black and red energy beam, as Asta would instantly shoot it directly into Mars's chest, blowing him backwards and causing massive amount of damage to the entire dungeon, as everyone can feel it shaking. Now once Mars ends up getting hit by the attack, he ends up getting sent flying and crashing hard into the walls of the dungeon, as you could literally see that this man was a few seconds away from falling into unconsciousness before finally his secondary magic would then activate, causing him to then recover, although not completely, as he would then immediately begin to summon out a ginormous amount of diamond armor, telling Asta that he was finally going to take him seriously now, as he now acknowledged Asta as a true threat. And yet, even after hearing this, Asta showed no care whatsoever, even after Mars approaches him in his diamond golem armor, as Asta just simply stares at him with a blank expression on his face, as you can see that he was quite bored about the whole thing. As Mars, seeing this, would then summon out a generous amount of diamond blades, as each one of them would be huge, as he then sends them flying towards Asta. As everyone seeing this would then call out to him, thinking that Asta may possibly get injured from this, but Asta literally displayed his abilities multiple times now. He's easily able to run circles around Mars, he's able to create barriers, but honestly, Asta just wanted to have just a little bit of fun. Especially seeing that Mars was able to tank one of his attacks, Asta decided to test out just a little bit of his magic, just a little bit. Basically, he's trying to have a little bit of fun, since he thinks that he's not going to have much opportunities like this in quite a while. So with that thought in mind, this is where we would then see Asta as he then begins to generate a ginormous amount of magic. This magic being so strong that it causes everyone to tense up, and even Mars himself, but he doesn't stop his attack, as he continues charging at Asta, trying to hit him, with Asta finally making his move, as we would then see him basically teleport, surprising everyone as they don't even know where he went. They didn't even see the silhouette or nothing. As in the very next instant, we will then see Asta as he'll be right in front of Mars, who was still in his diamond golem armor, as he would then calmly place the palm of his hand directly on the armor, as this is where Asta would then utter the next words. "Chaos Blast!" He would say the words, as after uttering those words, we will then see a black and red energy then erupt from the diamond armor, completely destroying it, as Mars, who got caught up in the explosion, can do nothing more but look at Asta in shock, as he couldn't believe that he was defeated so easily by someone who looked as if he wasn't even trying. As in the very next instant, all you could hear was a ginormous explosion shaking up the entirety of the dungeon, and we could also see Mars as his body would be quite damaged, but he would still be alive, as he ended up getting shown to be unconscious, as he'll be landing into the water of the dungeon, just completely knocked out, like he was not responsive whatsoever. All the while, the rest of the people there would just be looking on in complete shock, as they finally begin to realize exactly just the gap in strength that Asta had over them. As many of them thought that while yes, Asta was most definitely strong and especially very fast, that's mostly just meant around speed and everything else, that other than that, Asta didn't have much else going for him. But unfortunately, they were all wrong. Especially Yuno, as he ends up once again gritting his teeth, but then smiling, as he then realizes that just meant that he had to train even more, to which he was gladly willing to do so. As now with Mars defeated, this is where we can now turn to the rest of the events that play out, as we end up seeing that the Golden Dawn team and the Black Bulls then enter into the treasure room. As by this point now, Mars is not going to really interrupt them, so that means that whole event doesn't play out. But one particular thing that does play out is the fact that during the time of them being in the treasure room, as everyone else will be exploring like all the different golds and stuff that was there, we actually see Asta just casually leaning up against a wall as he shows no care in jewelry whatsoever. But while doing so, this one suddenly he would then feel something, as something was kind of synergizing with his magic, as Asta could sense his presence nearby, causing him to feel very confused, but nonetheless he began to follow it. As maneuvering throughout the treasure room, eventually Asta would then stumble upon them, a set of 2 golden rings, ones that honestly seemed to connect to Asta. It just clicked with him immediately. As suddenly picking them up, this is where we would then see the rings then respond to Asta, as without any hesitation they just immediately latch onto him, as he would have a ring on both of his fingers, as soon as these rings connected with Asta, that's when Asta felt it. The magic power that he usually has to like keep at control constantly, to the point where he literally has to willingly hold himself back, he now felt that magic just simply be disappeared. Well, no, that's not the right word to say it. More like it had been fully restrained without Asta having to do anything. As that's when Asta would then look at the ring in surprise, as this one it would then be revealed that the rings were actually holding back Asta's magic, restraining it. As this actually allowed Asta to use his magic much more freely, as he now has much better control over it compared to how it was before. As this means that Asta can now use his magic more times in fights, which means that he doesn't have to worry about, accidentally losing control of it and causing like mass destruction all around. As just understanding and feeling this will cause Asta to then smile, just a small one, before suddenly he would then once again put on a serious expression, as he would then see that the dungeon was finally crumbling, as it was finally time for them to head out. As just like that, we would then see the rest of the events that play out here remain the exact same way as it does in the main timeline. As soon after finally exiting out of the dungeon, we would then see Klaus as he then apologizes to both Asta and Yuno, before eventually both teams then have to go their separate ways, with the Black Bulls reporting back to Yami and the Golden Dawn reporting back to William. And soon both captains then decide to send their teams to the capital in order to report this to Julius, to which they end up doing so, with Luck not going mostly because of the fact that he believes that the capital is boring. So he decides to stay there at the Black Bulls base, all the while Asta and Noelle then head off on their own, before eventually they will then encounter the Golden Dawn team, as both teams decide to travel together to the Wizard King. And along the way, we could actually see that the same events that happen here play out the exact same way like it does in the main timeline, with Mimosa revealing that she has a crush on Asta to Noelle, and both of them just kind of like, fangirling about the whole thing and trying to keep it hidden from Asta, with Asta just completely ignoring them since he was just here so that way he can eventually go back to the Black Bulls to do missions. But at least while he's there, he might as well talk to Yuno, as both of them were communicating about their training and about the different missions they were going to go on, with Klaus chipping in once in a while. Now during this time, as they end up going to Julius, they do eventually end up arriving there, as they end up giving him the report, with him being fascinated with both Asta and Yuno. But eventually, after, finally getting over the whole, fanboying thing about magic, eventually Julius will then give both teams the permission to attend the banquet, as well as to attend the ceremony that was being held there. Now Asta, after hearing this, would feel very reluctant to go, only for Noelle and Yuno to then drag him along, with Asta wondering exactly when did he allow himself to get so pushy, since after all, he wasn't exactly, cool with people just grabbing him out of nowhere and then dragging him along. But nonetheless, Asta ends up attending the banquet, as just like that, we would then see the events of the main timeline then begin to play out, as the ceremony would then be held, though those who were rewarded would be rewarded, before eventually the banquet would then turn around, as we end up seeing everyone just be there enjoying their time. But the one thing that does end up changing is the fact that Asta, he doesn't really try to stand out too much, as instead him and Yuno are just in the corner, chilling and just eating their food. But during the time of doing this, unfortunately Noelle's brother does decide to be a dickhead to Noelle, as he ends up dumping water on her and just making her feel bad. Now this would end up causing many people there to just simply look at her, as many of them begin to point, laugh, and Noelle's sister especially was just making sure to continuously just make the situation worse, as Noelle was actually tearing up. And normally, had it been any other noble, Asta just simply wouldn't care. He wouldn't care at all. He wouldn't get involved. But yet, like I said before, Noelle was one of the only few nobles out there that Asta tolerated. So seeing this, Asta immediately stepped up. And just like that, this is where we would then see the events of the main timeline then begin to play out, as this is where the captain, or should I say the vice captain of the Golden Dawn, would then enter as he tries to restrain Asta, telling him that he shouldn't get into matters that are far beyond him. And immediately after Asta heard this, you can see him begin to tweak out, as he ends up wondering just what the heck was up with nobles and putting down commoners, when they were literally equally, they were all human. What was so special about them? As Asta truly began to tweak out, especially when Solid then decided to intervene as well, letting Asta know that he should humble himself, as he begins to form a water spear and just immediately send it towards Asta. And Asta really begins to realize something. Had it been any other person besides him in this situation, they could have possibly been very gravely injured. As Asta then begins to imagine if one of his siblings were in this situation, and this caused them to just immediately snap. Suddenly bursting with black and red energy, we would then see that Asta's energy was so powerful enough to the point where the sand armor that was holding him down would then be destroyed immediately. And not only that, but we also see that the water spear that was sent at him would be obliterated upon contact with Asta, as every one of the Magic Knights attending the banquet would just be there looking on in complete shock, as Asta would be there still having the black and red energy just shooting out of him, as he would be shaking with anger. How dare you? How dare you act as if you're better than everyone else? You guys, I can never understand you nobles. What is wrong with you? Can you guys all see that all of us are equal? You guys like to boast about your wealth, your magic, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, since all of us share the same blood at the end of the day. But yet you guys still like to blatantly put down everyone else just to validate yourselves. And just thinking about it all, it's just sickening. You guys are raw to the core. Asta would tell them all, and this will cause everyone to just be quiet, as literally they didn't know what to say, especially with the ominous amount of magic that Asta was releasing. They really couldn't say anything. Asta legit stood on business. No one wanted to touch him, except for, well, Noel's brother. And no, I'm not talking about Solid, the weakling. No, I mean the captain. As the pressure begins to fall upon the entire area, as is when finally Nozel then decides to step up, telling Asta that he had no right to criticize them, as he would stare at Asta coldly, as the pressure would be so powerful enough to the point where it begins to shake up the entirety of the banquet. But yeah, if you thought that Asta would back down or feel fear, then of course you'd be dead wrong, as instead Asta just glares 10 times directly towards Nozel, as Nozel, feeling the amount of malice that Asta held, was so shooken up by it that he actually released the pressure, only for a much more dangerous and destructive pressure to fill in the entire area. As if you thought Nozel's pressure was strong by the way that it shook up the banquet, Asta's pressure was so strong that it actually began to crack the foundation. As taking a quick look around the surroundings, you could see that portions of the banquet was actually getting destroyed due to Asta's pressure. As now quickly shifting our attention to Asta, we could actually see his eyes now glowing red as he stares down at Nozel, who by this point now was actually beginning to lower to his knees. As Asta would then ask him what right did the nobles have to treat commoners that way, to treat anyone that way. As Asta continues staring down at Nozel with the pressure going even bigger, this is when finally someone would be there to then stop Asta. This being none other than Yuno, as Yuno had to intervene in the very last moment, as he was so far the only one that seemed unaffected by the pressure, as he just calmly grabs Asta by the shoulder, letting him know that that was enough. Now Asta, hearing this, would then immediately turn to Yuno, only to then stop, as you can see that the red in his eyes then disappear, as Yuno would be shown, as if you thought that he was not affected by the pressure, you would be wrong, as Yuno's face was now way paler than it was before, and not only that, but you could see that Yuno was actually showing true fear towards Asta. And Asta seeing this, actually, that actually stung him a little bit, like that actually hurt, to see that his siblings was actually afraid of him. That caused Asta to immediately begin to regret the actions that he did, as at that moment he just simply decided to go back to the corner and just eat his food in peace, as he realized that he needed to calm down at this very moment. But by this point now, as Asta would go back to the corner to just relax and to chill, this is when Fagolian would then enter, wondering what was going on, as he would look around to see that the entirety of the banquet was silent. But you see, while he was wondering what was going on, this is when suddenly one of the Magic Knights would then point out something, as suddenly everyone would then turn to look outside, only to be surprised, as a ginormous fire would then erupt around the entirety of the royal capital, as they were under attack. And Yuno, seeing this, would then suddenly then turn towards Asta, only to see that he was gone. As now shifting our attention, we would then see Asta as he'll be jumping from rooftop to rooftop, immediately trying to locate the threat. As right now at this very moment, this is where I'm gonna put an end to part 1 to what if Asta has Shadows' abilities. So picking up the what if, right where I left off, we now turn to see Asta. As current right now, he'll be zipping throughout the capital in order to find the leader behind the attack. As while doing this, turning to Asta's perspective right now, we'll see him as he'll be dashing through multiple different alleyways and just going through hordes of undead like they were nothing. And he'll be doing all this in under a few seconds, as due to his super speed, this was relatively easy. Until eventually he'll then soon stumble upon Rades, as similar to how he does in the main timeline, Asta would find him just as he was about to attack a child. And immediately leaping into action, I'm not even going to describe the fight scene, as there really is no fight scene. Asta ends up defeating him in one blow, while also making sure to get the child a safe distance away. As Rades would then next be shown to be actually cratering into a wall, where you can see that on the right side of his cheek, similar to, if you guys watch One Piece when Luffy punched Bellamy and he had like the fist mark in his face, yeah, Rades will look like that, and he'll be cratering into a wall. As now with Rades being knocked out, we can actually see multiple hordes from the undead that was attacking the capital then be soon deactivated, causing the civilians to now be saved. As now with Rades defeated, this is when Asta would then turn to the child, as the child will be looking at all this in confusion before finally connecting all the dots and then looking at Asta in amazement, telling him that she was extremely thankful to him. And Asta, although, being very stoic and being a tough guy, he does show appreciation to it, as he ends up patting the girl on her head and letting her know that he's going to go ahead and, take her to her parents. as using his super speed, it was pretty easy to find them, and he found them relatively quickly as well. As soon after leaving the girl with their parents, this is where we will then see Asta as he spends the next few moments just making sure that all the civilians were saved and that no more attacks were happening. But while he was doing this is when he would then soon encounter both Noel and Leopold, as both of them had decided to chase after Asta, which was, a very much impossible task as they couldn't keep up with him. But now that they finally found Asta, this is where Leopold, just like he does in the main timeline, would then declare to Asta saying that he was his rival now, with Asta just simply ignoring him. As after that, for the next few moments, we would just see the three of them just being there, making sure all the civilians were okay, until Fuegoleon would then soon arrive. As now that the undead were no longer attacking, Fuegoleon can focus on trying to dull the flames of the area, since after all, there was still large amounts of fire all around. But thanks to his magic, not only would he be able to dull the flames, but he would also be able to completely extinguish them, causing less damage around the entirety of the capital. But you see, while Fuegoleon was doing this though, this is when Asta would then catch notice of something in the very last second, as he would then tell Fuegoleon to stop, but unfortunately, Fuegoleon was way too late. As similar to how it does in the main timeline, Fuegoleon would end up getting captured into a portal, or at least he would at first, as Fuegoleon had actually, missed a portal opening up underneath his feet, causing him to be sucked up in it. As just as things were about to go exactly as it does in the main timeline, as Leopold will be crying out to his brother trying to help him, this is when suddenly Asta, almost seeming as if he teleported, would then appear right in front of Fuegoleon, as he was actually able to grab his hand in the very last second and yank him out of the portal. As everyone would just be there watching in complete shock, as the portal would then soon end up closing, but not being able to take Fuegoleon as it was intended for. As everyone would just be there watching in complete shock, with Fuegoleon trying to understand what just happened. I can't believe it. I couldn't even react, but yet he was still able to reach me. This boy, just who is he? Fuegoleon will be asking this question in his head, as he'll be looking at Asta, just trying to piece together who exactly is this boy, with Asta not really caring one bit, as instead he was focusing on something else. This being the fact that Asta had been able to actually find the signature that was behind the attack. Basically, thanks to the magical sense that he has, he was able to locate exactly where this person was hiding. And this caused Asta to then gain a look of determination as he prepares to hunt down the man, only for a portal to then open up, as a bunch of mages will then be arriving to ambush Asta and the gang. Now, even though Asta and the rest of the squad was outnumbered, that didn't really mean anything, as every last one of them were able to take care of their respective opponents rather easily, before eventually, after taking care of all those mages, Fuegoleon as well as Asta would then soon end up going out to find Voltos, who was still trying to go into hiding after Radius was defeated. But thanks to Asta being able to sense him, it was too late, as both Asta and Fuegoleon would then find him before knocking him out, then capturing him, as this will fully put an end to the attack on the capital, as then we will now do a little bit of a time skip. So now flashing forward to after all the conflict has been settled down and after the Magic Knights have finally regrouped with each other, this is where we would then see Julius then end up returning back. As similar to the main timeline, he ends up thanking the Magic Knights for their service while also informing them about the approaching enemy. As this causes everyone to grimace as they didn't realize that a potential threat is actually coming to the Clover Kingdom in quite a while. But still nonetheless, they do plan to take care of it efficiently just like they usually do. As after this little brief discussion, this is where they will then go their separate ways. As this is where we will then see the rest of this arc actually coming to an end. As similar to the main timeline, we see Asta along with Noel and also Charmy, who had tagged along this entire time. Just, no one had noticed her being there. This is when suddenly all of them would then encounter Yuno in the Golden Dawn. As Yuno would then try to show Asta just how strong he had gotten, as just like in the main timeline, Yuno had faced off against the witch and had gotten a major power buff by awakening his spirit. As now trying to show off exactly how strong he is, this is where we would then see Yuno then create a ginormous winged arrow as he then shoots it at Asta. And Asta, even though he was seeing such a powerful attack, we would then see him easily show Yuno exactly what type of class they were in, as even though everyone else on his side was panicking, Asta would then calmly raise one hand into the air, as we would then see black and red energy then emerge from it, As the very second that the arrow had connected with Asta's hand, this is where Yuno and everyone else would then watch in complete shock as a very powerful attack would then just be destroyed. It would be left to nothingness. As Yuno as well as everyone else watching would then see as Asta had not only just completely but also easily just outclassed Yuno in every type of way. As in that very instant, everyone knew exactly what the gap between Asta and Yuno truly was. As Yuno would then realize that he had a long way to go, but even after all that, he wouldn't be discouraged. In fact, he'll be even more pumped up for it and even more inspired, as he then declares to Asta that he's not going to lose next time. With Asta just sending him a nod with a little bit of a grin before suddenly going off on his own, before Noel and then Charmy would then follow. As now with this part of the story now taken care of, this is where we can now move forward to the next arc. This being the Eye of the Midnight Sun encounter arc. So entering the arc, we now enter with Asta after the events that transpired at the capital, as he will just be continuing on with his regular routine. This being going on missions, training his magic, and overall just, being dedicated to his goal. As he would also be occasionally sending letters to his village just to check up on them, while also sending them money in order to fund the orphanage and just the entirety of the village. As Asta was slowly but surely getting closer and closer to his goal. But while Asta was doing this though, during the time, this is where we would then see him then get invited to the mixer by Finral, similar to how it does in the main timeline. But unfortunately, Finral was rejected considering the fact that Asta has no time for any of that and was way too dedicated to his own training and to make sure that his village got money that he didn't want to get any distractions. So with that, Finral decides to bring Magma along, so that event still ends up happening, just not in the same way, and we're still able to move on from it, especially since the next part still remains unchanged. As you see, turning to the next day, as we see Asta once again at the midst of his training, this is when suddenly he would then hear a distress signal. As this was coming from a magical device, as if you guys remember the magical devices that were distributed among the Magic Knights, basically like a phone and everything like that, well, Asta would be sensing the device as it will be releasing a distress signal, letting him know that something was going on. And looking around, Asta would be confused as he realized that the base today was kind of empty, as every last one of the Black Bulls had their own tasks and responsibilities, leaving Asta alone at the base, meaning that he was the only one that had to answer it. So now with that, this is where we end up seeing Asta as he ends up going to the device and just, picking it up to see exactly who was calling, and this is when Asta would then be informed about the situation. As currently right now, similar to the main timeline, the events that were happening at Rebecca's village would be playing out, with the children there being captured by both Nij and Baro in order to extract their magic. And due to having no idea what to do, the village chief at that village had no choice but to decide to send a distress signal to any nearby Magic Knights. All the while Ghosh and Sister Teresa had headed off to the location to do exactly as they were planning to do in the main timeline. Now when Asta ends up receiving the signal, and after getting informed about the whole situation, this is when he would then immediately tell them to stay put, as he would then dash off to the location, arriving there in only a couple of seconds. Now once he arrives, the villagers that were there would immediately be surprised by how quickly he had arrived, but then immediately begin to beg him to go after and save the children, especially Rebecca. As Rebecca by this point was completely in tears, and she looked just ruined by now, as she was just wondering where they all went and wanted Asta to go save the children. And Asta seeing how everyone was, this is when suddenly he would then begin to just picture how everything would be if this was Hajj village, the village where he came from. As he imagined what it would be like if his siblings were captured. And just thinking about it just immediately pissed off Asta, as he grew angry. As Asta would then suddenly approach the village chief, asking him where the location was, where they all had been spotted, and after getting the information, this is where Asta would then suddenly dash off to the location, letting everyone know that he'll be back soon. Now skimming forward a little bit, we now turn to when Asta ends up arriving at the mountain, and when he does, the first thing he will see would be Sister Teresa, as she will be healing one of Rebecca's siblings. Now when seeing Asta's arrival in his Magic Knight robe, Sister Teresa would then ask Asta to go help the other children, only for him to suddenly super speed both her and the child back to the village, without any hesitation. Now this would catch both Sister Teresa and the child by surprise, as this is when suddenly more and more children begin to appear. As this was all happening, mind you, in a blink of an eye, like Asta was literally just teleporting back and forth basically, or at least that's how it looked like to everyone else. As Sister Teresa would see more and more kids appear, with every last one of them being confused, as one second they were stuck in a very creepy cave with both Nij and Baro there, and the very next second they were here, free and back with their parents. as Sister Teresa would just be there watching everything, completely shocked as she wonders who exactly was this child. As she sees Asta appear and disappear multiple times, until eventually this is when she would then snap out of it, as one of the children would then grab on her robe, asking her if she could, help him out since he was a little bit cold, and not only that, but a little bit injured. And seeing this, Sister Teresa immediately began to work on healing them, although Asta would continue retrieving more and more children. As in a matter of seconds, all the children will be back into the village, with the only one being left there would be none other than Marie. Now turning to Asta, as we see him once again dash towards the cave, he would then arrive there once again to see Marie, as she'll be there watching Ghosh, who is still fighting. Now Asta tries to bring Marie back to the village, but this is when Marie would then suddenly grab Asta's arm and beg him to help out her brother, as she ends up telling Asta that if he doesn't help out Ghosh, then Ghosh will end up dying. As Asta seeing this would be, confused, as he then looks at the scene only to see exactly what she meant. As you see, Ghosh, due to him being in a blind rage and just attacking relentlessly, he got caught off guard by Niji's attack, causing him to now be in a very sticky situation, as he was surrounded by a bunch of snow golems that were now beating the living crap out of him. And even though he tries to fight back, unfortunately due to him not getting a chance to gather up magic, that meant that Ghosh was literally standing on his last legs. And Asta seeing this would then once again be a little bit annoyed, but still nonetheless will decide to help. As he ends up telling Marie that he's going to dash her back to the village, then he's going to come back to help her brother. And after looking at Asta for quite a while to see if he was potentially lying, this is where Marie would then agree to it, as just like that we would then see Asta then take Marie back to the village, making sure she was a safe distance away and making sure that she was with Sister Teresa, before eventually he would then run back to help out Ghosh. As we now turn to the fight, we will see Ghosh standing on his last legs, as he would just be there trying to understand exactly how he was losing here, but still at the end of the day, as he ends up looking at Nij, all he could feel was anger. He wanted nothing more but to eviscerate the guy in front of him for hitting his sister, as he would try to gather magic once again, only to be punched in the face and sent flying, as once again the snow golems were relentless. As Ghosh would be there getting hit over and over again and was fading into unconsciousness, this is when suddenly every last one of the snow golems would then suddenly just disappear, as Asta, in the very split second right as Ghosh was about to be knocked out, had actually arrived at the scene and just immediately obliterated the snow golems. As Ghosh would just be there laying on the ground, bloody and everything, he would then suddenly try getting up as he looks at Asta, as he then glares at him. "I don't need your help. Wait a minute, where's Marie?" Ghosh would then say, as he then looks around to see that his sister's not there, causing him to grow angry and worried, as he then screams at Asta, telling him where his sister was, only for Asta to then look at him and then coldly tell him to shut up. As suddenly Asta would then send a small miniature blast of magic directly into Ghosh's face, knocking him out, but not enough to actually do some, serious damage or anything like that, as now all that was left was just Nij, Baro, and Asta. As the three of them would be there staring down at each other, with Baro feeling a ginormous amount of hesitation, as he had just seen Asta's speed and saw that he was moving so fast that neither of them could react. As this is when he would then try using the magic scouter to see how strong Asta was, only to be surprised, as at first it stopped at 1,000, then 2,000, then 5,000, as they just continued going up and further, as suddenly the scouter would then break. As Nij would then suddenly turn to Baro, asking him what was wrong, as Baro would then suddenly be there as he looked extremely pale, as if all the color that was in his body just left him, as he then shakily points a finger at Asta, asking him just what the hell was he, as no monster, there's no such thing as a human being with that much magical power. It didn't make any sense. As Baro continues to go on a rant, but unfortunately Asta, he was just at a wit's end, as after all these guys had interrupted his training, and not only that but they captured a bunch of children, which already made Asta hate them. As suddenly moving so fast that once again no one's able to react, Asta is able to knock out both Nij and Baro, putting an end to their fight immediately. As now with both Nij and Baro taken care of, this is where we're now going to do a miniature time skip. So now turning to after Asta had defeated Nij and Baro, we will now see him as he had captured both of them using his magic to restrain them, as he had planned to interrogate them. Now Ghosh by this point had actually awakened, as he would ask Asta where Marie was, with Asta telling him that she was back at the village and telling him to go over there to get patched up. Now Ghosh, although he wanted nothing more but to argue against Asta, unfortunately he was way too weakened, and not only that but he was so desperate to see if Marie was okay, as he ends up letting Asta know that if anything happened to her that he would pay, before suddenly heading off. as Asta would roll his eyes in response to the threat before turning to both Neej and Baro as he prepares to interrogate them. But before he gets the chance, this is when suddenly Asta would sense something approaching. As dodging out of the way, this is where Asta would see a light spear, as a light spear was so close actually hitting Asta in the back of the head. As Asta's sighing as he already knows that more trouble is arriving, this is when he would then get up as he then turns to look behind him to see none other than Licht, the leader of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. As Licht would then end up arriving, this is when he would then ask both Neej and Baro exactly what was the progress on the mission. With both Neej and Baro actually panicking as they actually were not planning to meet the leader, they were planning to meet Sally, but it seems as if they wouldn't get the chance. As both of them tried to explain what was going on, this is when suddenly Licht would then create two light spears, as this is when he then shoots them at both Neej and Baro, intending to kill them since if they revealed any information to Asta, that meant that they were worthless. As both Neej and Baro would then see their life flash before their eyes, this is when suddenly, at the very next split second, both of them would then be taken to safety, as Asta had been able to grab them right in the nick of time and made them move out of the way of the attack, causing both the light spears to destroy the area where they were, but luckily both Neej and Baro were still alive. Now Licht would actually be surprised by Asta's speed as he didn't ask Asta why exactly did he save them, especially with the acts they committed. And Asta looks at Licht before suddenly answering. Don't get the wrong idea, I'm not exactly saving them because of sentimental value. I'm saving them so I can extract information for later. And if you think for a second I'm letting you get away as well, then you're going to be deeply mistaken. As Licht, after hearing this threat from Asta, this is when suddenly he would then begin to smirk, letting Asta know that unfortunately he couldn't let him live any longer, as by now Licht had acknowledged Asta as a threat to their plans, so it was better that Asta would be eliminated. As now with those thoughts in his mind, this is where Licht would then suddenly summon multiple arrays of light spears, as Asta would then build up on his own magic as well, as the fight between both Licht and Asta would then begin. Now the fight first starts off with both Asta and Licht just simply disappearing from both Neej and Baro's eyes, as both of them would end up clashing with each other. Asta using his, chaos magic to go ahead and blast Licht, with Licht using a light spear to block the attack, but being surprised by the fact that Asta was able to overpower him, as the light spear would then break immediately after getting into contact with Asta's magic, as Asta would then punch Licht in the face before sending him flying. But you see, as Asta would do this, the light spears that were all around would then suddenly rush at him, as basically they were kind of like a self-defense mechanism, as once Licht would get hit, they would attack Asta on command. But yet, even after this array of light spear would head after Asta, none of them would hit, as Asta was just simply faster than all of them, as he was able to easily dodge out of the way of every last one of these light spears. But while he was doing this is when Licht would then recover, as he ends up creating a ginormous light whip as he tries to hit Asta, with Asta once again dodging. As a fight between the two of them would rage on, as we will see multiple amounts of the cave being destroyed by their battle, as Asta is able to easily destroy all of Licht's attacks while also dodging them. And not only that, but he's able to damage Licht so badly enough to the point where Licht couldn't stay in the fight for too long. As eventually, after trading blows for a while, this is where Licht would then come to the realization that Asta was someone that he couldn't take on by himself. As once that thought had came into his mind, this is where suddenly he would then see Asta disappear before his eyes, as he ends up looking around to find him, only for him to then be blindsided and knocked into unconsciousness. As Asta had been able to successfully knock out Licht, as that put an end to the fight rather quickly. Or at least that's what Asta had thought. As we now move to the next scene. So now turning to the next few moments, we now turn to see Asta once again, as by this point now he'll be interrogating Licht about the operation he was running, with Licht just being there watching Asta with a void look on his face, before suddenly this is when he would then begin to speak. And this is when Licht would then begin to reveal how sinister the Eye of the Midnight Sun truly was, as he lets Asta know about the plan to extract the kid's magic, about the plan to overthrow the capital, and not only that but just the annihilation of humans in general. As Asta would just be there listening to everything, as he would actually break out of his stoicness for the first few times in quite a while, as he'll be there listening to the horrors as Licht begins to let Asta know exactly how he feels about human, as Asta could actually hear the hatred in Licht's voice as he ends up telling Asta that humans like him were nothing more but scum of the earth and that they should have been eliminated. No, they should have been extinct. As after revealing exactly what his plans were, this is when Asta would then suddenly hear a beast claw rushing to his face, as he then turns to the side to see the attack approaching. But luckily, Asta is able to dodge out of the way thanks to his quick reflexes, as this one suddenly he would then be jumped by the other 3 leaders of the Midnight Sun. As they would arrive, as each one of them would then throw their respective attacks at Asta, with Asta dodging out of the way and getting a safe distance away from them. As Asta would be there, watching all 4 members now, as every last one of the leaders had reunited, with Licht now being free from his restraint. As Veto begins to go on a monologue, telling Asta that he was a slippery bastard, but he's going to make sure that he tastes true despair, with Fauna saying that she's going to obliterate Asta, and Raya just letting Asta know that he really screwed up big time. As Licht then tells Asta that now that he knows all this stuff, that he can no longer be let alive, and telling him that this will be his grave. As Asta would be there listening to Licht and the rest of them, but the thing was, even though he was hearing all this, and even though he was confronted by probably the greatest threats to the Clover Kingdom in quite a while, Asta didn't feel any fear. He didn't feel anything. No, the only thing he truly felt at this moment was nothing more but disgust. As after hearing the hatred that Licht had for humans, and after seeing how he showed no sentiment at all, even to children, this will cause Asta to feel not only disgusted, but enraged. As suddenly Asta's grimoire begins to release a ginormous amount of black and red energy. As this energy that he was releasing was so strong that it began to shake up the entirety of the cave. As every last one of the members of the Midnight Sun that was there began to pale, as they wonder what was going on. As now quickly turning our attention to Asta's grimoire, we would then see it flip through multiple pages rapidly before arriving at a certain page. As suddenly a whole new spell would then be created, as this will be as a way for Asta to vent out his frustration. As Asta, feeling enraged and disgusted by the Eye of the Midnight Sun, this is when a voice would then suddenly call out to him mentally, as it would then give Asta specific instruction, letting him know to go all out. As Asta would then suddenly end up taking off his golden rings as he would then utter the words, "Chaos Control!" As after saying these words, this is where suddenly we would then see time itself then freeze, as the Eye of the Midnight Sun can do nothing more but widen their eyes in complete shock, as their expressions will be kind of comedic to anyone else that was watching, as they had showed a face of pure horror, as the magic that Asta was releasing was so strong that time itself would freeze. As just like that, nothing was moving, everything was frozen, with the only one being able to move would be Asta. As this weird energy was just releasing from him, as Asta just looked and felt completely different. It was almost as if he was a completely new being entirely. And in that split instance, as Asta would be there, having this energy surrounding him, this is when suddenly he would then see someone. As in this area that was completely frozen, Asta would then see someone there, as it would be glowing, as he couldn't really get a good look at them. But this is when the individual, or whatever it was, would then tell Asta that this was just nothing more but the beginning of his abilities. As Asta would ask him who he was, but unfortunately, before he could get any answer, the individual would then fade away. As Asta would just be there wondering what was going on, but still nonetheless, he would then realize what he needed to do. As now turning to the Midnight Sun leaders that were not moving at all, this is where we would then see Asta in the very next split instance defeat every last one of them. I'm not even going to describe the fight here, considering the fact that there is no fight. They couldn't even punch, they couldn't do anything. As Asta would be able to defeat every last one of the leaders before a single second could pass. As by the time that Asta was finally done, this is where we would then hear a ginormous explosion go off. As far away, turning our perspective to Rebecca's village, every last one of the villagers, now happy to be reunited with their children, would then look on in complete shock as they see the mountain itself then just explode. As a ginormous amount of smoke would then rise up from the mountain, as they could do nothing but watch on in shock, wondering what was going on. As now turning our attention back to Asta, we would then see him standing there stoically with his arms crossed, as currently right now laying at his feet would be none other than all 4 leaders of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. And not only that, but we also see Neej and Baro as well, as, not gonna lie, they got caught up in the explosion. Like, Asta was not playing any games. But luckily every last one of them were alive, just barely. As Asta would just be there remaining stoic, as this is when he would then use the magical device as he solemnly calls up the Magic Knights, letting him know to pick up the leaders. As this is where we now end up doing a time skip. As now turning to the very next few moments by the end of this arc, we end up seeing the Eye of the Midnight Sun, the leaders specifically, then get captured by the Magic Knight captains, as every last one of them were taken into questioning. And not only that, but after using Mark's magic, They would then soon find out exactly where their base of operation were, as well as the other factions that were hidden throughout the entirety of the Clover Kingdom. As this is where we will then see every last one of the Magic Knights then hunt down the entirety of the Midnight Sun entire organization, as they would end up getting raided and capturing all the mages all around, as Nero would be there watching all this, wondering how exactly one 16-year-old boy was able to accomplish all of this, and who exactly was he? As now with this arc coming to an end, this is where we can now move on to the next one, this being the Heart Kingdom Joint Struggle arc, as we now end up doing another time skip. So now flashing forward to now multiple months that have passed after the events that went down between Asta and the Eye of the Midnight Sun, we will now see Asta once again, as currently right now he'll be returning back to the Black Bull's base after just completing a mission. But you see, along with him, as Asta would be there returning back, we would actually hear someone just kind of nabbing on Asta, basically just telling him how boring the mission was and how they could have done better and how easy it was. As currently right now we will see that right beside Asta would be none other than Libe. As you see, throughout the months that had went by, as we now do a little bit of a flashback, we would now see Asta as it will be just after the events that happened with the Eye of the Midnight Sun. As Asta by this point had finally given a briefing to Julius and was just once again doing his regular training routine. But every single time Asta would train, he just began to feel like he was hitting a brick wall. As after the fight that happened, Asta had tried using the same ability once again, this being Chaos Control. But no matter how many times Asta had tried to activate it, it failed. It was like Asta was missing some type of condition. As Asta would try to think it through multiple times, this is when suddenly he would then hear a voice call out to him. You know, no matter how many times you try to do it, you're not going to be able to do it successfully. You haven't met the right conditions just yet. Now Asta, hearing this voice, began to look around as he even begins to use his magic to try to sense who this individual was. But once again, no matter how far Asta would send his magic, nothing would appear. As eventually, after hearing this voice continue talking to him, Asta would then shout out, telling him to come out already. And eventually, after Asta had finally called out at the individual, this is when suddenly Asta would see his surrounding areas then turn to darkness, as Asta was then dragged right into his mindscape. As Asta would be there, he would then see this ginormous entity right in front of him, this being Libe in his ginormous form. As Libe would be there looking at Asta, smiling, as Asta would see the demonic figure right in front of him. But yet, even after seeing this intimidating being, Asta wasn't afraid, as instead he just prepared to gather magic and fight the enemy, until eventually this is when Libe would then shrink back to his regular size, as Asta would then get to see him face to face. I've been wondering when exactly you were going to come to see me. So how have you been, brother? Libe would then ask Asta, with Asta being so confused about everything, as in the very next few moments, this is where Libe will begin to explain. As you see now doing another flashback, during the events that happened with Lichita and Libe that happened in the main timeline, we will see a very big change. This being the fact that when Lichita was with Libe, she did end up telling Libe about Asta, about the child she wished to keep but unfortunately couldn't, letting him know that she hoped that one day they would meet, and that by the time they would meet, they would become brothers and they would look out for each other. As Lichita would tell Libe about all the different ideas she had and how if Asta were there, they would be the best of friends. As Libe listening to all this, which mind you, Libe was very young, as he ends up listening to all this, he would just feel memorized, as he just can't help but wonder exactly how things would be once he actually got to meet his brother. But while Libe was thinking about all this is when, unfortunately, Lucifero would then strike, as the same events that play out would play out the exact same way, with Lichita having no choice but to stop Lucifero by stealing Libe away, but at the cost of her life, as Libe would have no choice but to say goodbye to Lichita, as for the next few years that go by, he would be by himself, before eventually he would then finally find him, a boy with magic that was so extraordinary, and the one that Lichita had told him that when they met, they would become brothers and look out for each other. As on the very day of the Grimoire ceremony, Libe had sensed his magic, and he had felt how ginormous it truly was. As right there, as he would actually float down to him, this is where Libe would then get to meet his brother for the first time, this being none other than Asta. As we now cut back to the first flashback. As after that encounter, as Libe had described to Asta about everything that happened, this is when Asta would just be completely shocked once again, as his stoicness just broke after hearing this, As this is when Libe would then tell Asta that he had promised to Lichita that he would look out for him, and even though Asta may not consider them brothers yet, Libe does, letting Asta know that he would help him out no matter what the situation was. But Asta, after hearing this, then tells Libe that that was quite a selfish move to make, as after hearing all this, Asta decided to do exactly as Lichita has intended, as he tells Libe that from that very moment, the second that he got the grimoire, and the second that Libe was actually helping out Asta when it came to controlling his magic, is when Asta had already decided that Libe was going to be his brother. As Libe, after hearing this, would actually be shocked, as in that very split incident, even though Asta was much tougher and even though he didn't really show emotions like that, even though Asta was very much like the, tough older brother type figure, Libe could see it. He could see the similarities between Asta and Lichita. As getting reminded of her, Libe would actually begin to shed tears, as Asta would be there just, patting him on the head, letting him know that it was alright, as this is when Libe would then suddenly begin to ask Asta for a favor. As even though he most definitely didn't want to bring Asta into it, there was really no one else he could turn to. As Libe would then beg Asta to help him avenge their mother, as after all, Libe just simply cannot move on until Lucifer was brought down. And Asta, after hearing this, would then agree to it. As from that very day, this is where we would then see Asta along with Libe, as both of them would end up growing stronger together, with Libe helping Asta control his magic and use it in different type of ways, with Asta also helping out Libe and just kind of getting out of the mental shell basically. As Libe thinks of being so alone for so long, he's not exactly used to common standards and stuff like that. But now with both of them being connected to each other, this actually allowed them to grow way stronger than he ever was before. As we now cut back to the present, Asta had been able to fully surpass that of the powers of the Magic Knight Captain. And not only that, but there's even been some speculation that Asta's power had been able to even rival that of the Wizard King himself. But you see, that was not the only thing that was going on. As throughout those months that went by, we will see a couple events that happened that, while yes, they didn't exactly happen the same way as it does in the main timeline, they would still happen nonetheless. Such as the introduction to both Nero and Henry, as Nero would end up revealing herself and telling all the Black Bulls about the situation that went down between her, the first Wizard King, and the elves. And not only that, but also Henry would then get introduced as the other member of the Black Bulls, with every last one of the Black Bulls accepting him even after his, strange illness. And not only that, but we also end up seeing all the Black Bulls as well as the rest of the Magic Knights growing way stronger, as thanks to the many months that went by and thanks to Asta's accelerated growth, every last one of them had decided to push themselves even harder, considering the fact that there was no way they were going to be outdone by a rookie. But unfortunately, even though every last one of them would train extremely hard, they just simply couldn't compete with Asta's growth. And not only that, but we also end up seeing the rankings of the Magic Knight squad, to which, no surprise there, the Black Bulls end up gaining first place, with the Golden Dawn being second. As thanks to the speed that Asta is taking on these different types of missions, and thanks to Asta using them as training, Asta had been able to actually push the Black Bulls to go into higher lanes, as every last one of the Black Bulls also pushed themselves as well, as a way not to be outdone by Asta. As overall, things were going extremely well for the Clover Kingdom. But you see, while the Clover Kingdom was growing in strength and just continuously evolving, this is when suddenly Julius would then be given a message. As you see, currently right now visiting the Clover Kingdom will be none other than Gaijin. As by now, the Heart Kingdom had finally met its match. As unfortunately, no matter how many times they tried, they just simply cannot overcome this problem. So they needed help from another kingdom. As this is when Gaijin would then deliver a letter to Julius, as this letter would be kind of an alliance. As currently right now, the Heart Kingdom needed help to defeat the next greatest threat, this being none other than the Spade Kingdom. As unfortunately, although they had tried, and although they most definitely had tried everything they could, they just simply were not able to match up well against the Spade Kingdom, especially after finding out about the demon contracts that they made. So due to having no other choice, the Heart Kingdom would like to make a temporary alliance with the Clover Kingdom in order for them to take care of the Spade Kingdom. And when Julius hears this letter, he'll be very surprised, considering the fact that this wasn't in any of his visions. As so far by now, you guys already know that Julius is able to see into the future and is able to predict many things. But you see, the thing is, his predictions have been completely off by this point. Nothing was going exactly as he intended. His death, the Clover Kingdom falling into chaos, and also potential death, all that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Everything was thrown out the window. When he had actually received the alert saying that the Ivdom and his son leaders had been captured, he was completely thrown off by it, as his visions of the future were proven wrong. As this is where Julius then realizes that Asta is the anomaly in this situation, as by now he can't predict exactly what's gonna happen. But unfortunately, there's nothing he can do but continue pushing on with the situation, as after getting this letter, this is where Julius would then agree to the temporary alliance. As after that, this is where every last one of the Magic Knight squad would then gain a 6-month training. Well, except for Asta. As by this point now, Asta has already trained himself enough to the point where he's actually able to contend with the Spade Kingdom. So while the rest of them are still playing catch up, Asta would actually help out when it came to taking on the Spade Kingdom, as Julius would actually give Asta a specific mission. This being the fact that he wants Asta, while the rest of them are training, to take care of their other sites and everything like that. Basically, he wants Asta to weaken them even further, although while the rest of them are training up in order to catch up to Asta. And Asta, after hearing and getting this mission, he would agree to it. As now with that, this is where we're now able to do once again another time skip. So now turning to the next couple of months that go by, we now turn to see the Spade Kingdom, and I'm not gonna lie to you, the Spade Kingdom isn't looking too well. During the months that went by, the Spade Kingdom had lost multiple amounts of their resources, the different bases that they set up all around, and overall, they were standing on their last few legs. As every last one of the other mages that were there that were trying their best to control everything were being taken out from Magic Knights of the Clover Kingdom, the Dark Triad would be there as they tried their best to understand exactly what went wrong. They thought they had everything planned out. Since they knew after all that they were the strongest because of their demon contracts, they thought for sure that the Magic Knights would spend most of their time just training, allowing them for even more opportunity to take control of more different lands. But unfortunately, it didn't seem as if things were going to go their way. As now turning to the Dark Triad, we now see Dainty, Vonica, and Xenon, as every last one of them would be there, as they will be silently frowning as they try to understand exactly what went wrong with their entire base of operation. But as all three of them were trying to figure out exactly what went wrong, this is when suddenly someone would then burst into the room, thus being one of the foot soldiers for the Dark Triad, as he tries to explain exactly what just went down, only for Xenon to then suddenly kill him without any hesitation, as currently right now they didn't need to hear even more bad news. As every last one of them would stare down at each other, this is when Dainty would then finally come up with a plan. This being the fact that he already came to the estimation about what exactly is causing the most damage for their entire operation, as he put it down to only 3 places. The first one being the Heart Kingdom, as that's where Lola Pachica was, and thanks to her magical ability, she has been causing the Dark Triad quite a bit of trouble for quite a long time. As Dainty would tell Vonica to take care of her, as by this point now, Dainty has think that she had lived long enough, and it's finally time for them to finish her. While at the same time, the second one will be the Golden Dawn base, as the Golden Dawn has put in quite a large amount of work, as most definitely they have been causing quite a large amount of disruption for Dainty and the Dark Triad, as they had been taken care of, and not only that, but actually gaining control over multiple different bases. And finally, the third one, which was most definitely not the least threat, in fact, in Dainty's eyes, was the biggest threat of them all, was the Black Bulls. As the Black Bulls have definitely made themselves probably one of, if not the most dangerous threat to the Dark Triad, especially this being from one certain individual, this being none other than Asta. Now, Asta by this point has become quite a boogeyman for the Spade Kingdom, well, to the people that were trying to take over the Spade Kingdom. For the civilians there, Asta was seen as a hero, as whenever he appears, he would be able to take care of all the threats without any single bit of damage to himself. And not only that, but he would be able to rescue all the civilians without them even being able to notice it. So overall, Asta was seen as this kind of angel basically, as once he appeared, all the bad guys just simply disappeared. But for the Dark Triad, he was their worst enemy. And Dainty thought it was fitting that he himself, as the leader of the Dark Triad, would take care of Asta. As after explaining the details about their plans, this is where every last one of the Dark Triad would then go their separate ways, each one of them ready to overcome their own battles. As this is where we will now once again do a miniature time skip. So now flashing forward to after the discussion between the Dark Triad, we will now turn to see every last one of them confronting their respective opponents. As the first one to battle anyone will be Vonica. She faces off against Noelle, who had been stationed there to protect Lola Pachica. I'm sorry, you guys know her second names. while at the same time Zenon would be there at the Golden Dawn base causing chaos, as even though the Golden Dawn had grown stronger, unfortunately with the demon contract, Zenon is just easily able to overpower all of them. But one person was luckily there to get in his way, this being Yuno. As even though Yuno had just heard that he was basically the prince of the Spade Kingdom, he still continued being a member of the Golden Dawn and is here to fight for his squad, as Zenon would face off against Yuno just like he does in the main timeline, as now all that left was Dainty. Now Dainty, when he arrives at the Black Bull's base, he would arrive to see that the base was fairly empty, as he would be kind of confused considering the fact that he heard that this was their hideout, so he expected large amounts of Black Bull members to be there. As he ends up looking through the windows of the base to see that no one was there, this is when suddenly he would then hear someone calling out to him. "I was expecting you to arrive. I just didn't think you would arrive this soon," a voice would call out to him. Dainty would look around, only to then look up to see none other than Asta. As currently right now, Asta would be shown sitting on the roof of the Black Bull's base, and not only that, but on his shoulder will be none other than Libe. As Libe was completely serious, no smile on his face, as he was staring narrowed eyes directly at Dainty. As Dainty, seeing Asta, would then begin to smirk, as even though he had heard the rumors of Asta, he never truly got a confrontation with him. But after looking at Asta and sensing his magic, Dainty was very confident that he could beat him, as Asta's magic didn't seem anything that Dainty had heard of, as he had heard description of how powerful Asta was and everything like that, but now being face to face with him, Dainty thought of it as nothing more but a joke. As this is when Dainty then tells Asta that he has been causing quite a large amount of trouble, letting Asta know that he's going to deeply regret it. But Asta, after hearing this threat, says nothing more, as he just continues looking at Dainty with a look of just someone that holds a ginormous amount of contempt, as he showed little care to what Dainty had to say, or really anything that Dainty planned. As to Asta, all of this was very simple. He was just simply going to eliminate him and get rid of him. Asta knows that Dainty had caused his brother quite a large amount of harm, so in his mind, Dainty was already someone that was dead in Asta's eyes. As Libe, who had always been very loud and very obnoxious in certain moments, this would be the quietest that Asta had ever seen him. As this is when Libe would then tell Asta that it's about time that they finally get started, to which Asta would agree. As suddenly Asta would then get up, telling Dainty that this was his grave, and that he actually planned for Dainty to arrive here, as all of this was according to Asta's plan. As you see, as we now do a little bit of a flashback, during a time after Asta had been able to take care of a majority of the bases, and as the Magic Knights were now becoming mobile, this is when Asta would actually talk to the Black Bulls, letting them know about a plan basically. You see, the thing is, Asta was taking care of a large amount of these bases, not just because of Julius's orders, but also for his own benefit. As you see, Asta was trying to bring the leader to him. And even though the chances of the plan working out completely were not 100%, Asta was confident that with the man's arrogance, Asta would be able to use it to his advantage. As basically, Asta didn't want to go to Dainty, he wanted Dainty to come to him, so that way he can take care of him exactly where he wanted him to be. As basically, Asta wanted to turn the Black Bull's base into Dainty's grave. And when the Black Bulls heard this, they were actually very surprised, as they asked Asta if he was truly confident that he could win against Dainty, with Asta, after hearing this, just calmly telling them that yes, he'd win. As after hearing Asta's very clear words, as he was saying this like it was a fact, the Black Bulls would agree to it. As they decide to give Asta some space, as now he can go all out without, having to worry about them getting in the way or them getting hurt by his attack, as now this was truly going to be a fight where Asta can go all out. As we now turn back to the present, we will see Dainty, as this is when suddenly he'll begin to use his gravity magic, increasing gravity on Asta, as the entirety of the Black Bull's base would then shake. But yet, even though Asta was feeling multiple amounts of gravity on him, he's shown to be very unaffected by it all, as instead he just calmly stands there, acting as if he was just feeling nothing. As this is when Asta would then ask Dainty if that was all he had, as in the very next split second, this is when Dainty would then be blasted away by a ball of chaos energy, as Asta had shot it out directly from the palm of his hands, as Dainty would be surprised as his entire arm had just been blown away by Asta's attack. As immediately seeing how much damage he had taken, he used his recovery magic, as this is when he then looks at Asta in complete shock. His magical power, it's not even a quarter compared to mine, yet he was still able to do this much damage to me? No, something is wrong here. Dainty is able to sum up, as it didn't make any sense. As from the very first appearance he got from Asta, he could already tell that Asta's magic didn't compare to his, or at least that's what he thought. But yet Asta, just from a simple attack, was able to completely blow away his arm? That wasn't right. But still, Dainty had no other choice, as this is when he then enters his 20% form. As this causes Dainty's arm to then regenerate, as he then tells Asta that he has to give him credit for the attack, but letting Asta know that just because he got a small bit of blood off of him doesn't mean anything. As in the very next split instant, this is where we would then see black orbs then appear all around Dainty, as he ends up creating them out of gravity, as he ends up shooting them directly at Asta, basically making a miniature black hole. And yet, even with these attacks approaching, Asta showed no fear and hesitation, as this is when Libe would then also disappear from Asta's shoulder, as magical energy just begins to erupt from Asta. As this energy was so powerful that was easily able to then destroy these black holes like they were nothing, as Dainty would be surprised, as in the very next split instant, Asta would then disappear. Dainty, seeing Asta's disappearance, would then suddenly stop his attack, as he then looks around trying to find him, only to then be blindsided by Asta. "Chaos Spear," Asta would say, as is when suddenly Dainty would then get slammed hard, as he would then be crashing into the ground, as Asta had been able to tackle him from behind, slamming him hard into the ground, as Asta had used his chaos magic in order to give a little bit of extra damage into his attack, along with his speed as well. As Dainty, after hitting the ground hard, would be stunned completely, as he would try to force himself to get up, but while he was doing so, Asta was not letting up. As after making sure that Dainty was on the ground, this is when Asta would then generate multiple amount of chaos blast, as he would then just begin to barrage Dainty, with Dainty not being able to do anything. As each one of these blasts were so strong that it shook up the entirety of the area they were fighting in. As Dainty, using his recovery magic, would try his best to stay conscious, but unfortunately it just didn't seem to work out, as he continued getting bombarded by blows and blows, with him not being able to do anything. But eventually he would then soon have enough of it, as he decides to go full on 100% form, as we would then see extra limbs begin to appear, as well as his gravity magic growing stronger, as he ends up creating a generous black hole between both him and Asta, as Asta, seeing the attack, would actually be caught off guard, as he would then dash away, as this attack was so strong that it nearly wiped out the entire area, all the while Dainty would be the only one to survive. As he would actually be once again revealed, as we see a large portion of the battlefield now taken care of, as he begins to laugh, thinking that he was able to get Asta, only to be surprised as Asta would be shown casually a few distances away, as he had been able to avoid the attack. "To think that you would actually be able to damage me this much, you, a weakling. Oh well, it doesn't matter anymore. I can still annihilate you here and now. You're nothing compared to me," Dainty tries to say, as he ends up creating one ginormous black hole. Using his gravity magic to the utmost potential that he could right now, he would create a ginormous black hole that was so large that it was going to swallow up the entire area, including the Black Bull's base itself. And yet, even after seeing this ginormous attack, Asta didn't flinch, he didn't show fear, in fact he didn't care whatsoever. As instead, he would actually hear Libe in the back of his mind, as Libe would be telling Asta to finish him already, as he was just tired of this guy. And Asta, after hearing this, would then nod his head, once again just listening, so that way, as this was a revenge for his mother, but also as a way to help out Libe to finally move on from the event. As this is when Asta would then utter the words, "Chaos Control," Asta would say, as just like that, this is where we would then see time itself then freeze, as currently right now no one was able to move except for Asta, as he was now completely in his own domain. As by now, this is where we would then begin to see Asta then generate a large amount of chaos energy, with Libe helping him as well, as Libe gathers all the chaos energy until a certain point, letting Asta know that they're ready to unleash it at any moment. As now, after gathering this much of chaos energy, this is where Asta would then suddenly disappear before appearing right in front of Dainty, letting him know that this was the end. As Dainty can do nothing more but look on, as time was frozen for him, he couldn't really do anything. This is when Asta would then utter the words, "Chaos Burst!" As after saying the words itself, this is where we would then see Asta then release the chaotic energy, with this energy being so strong that it actually ends up annihilating the surrounding area. As the Black Bull's base was luckily a safe distance away, so it didn't get caught up in the blast luckily, but still everything else that was there would just be annihilated. As Dainty, the generous black hole, the surrounding forest and everything would just be obliterated by Asta's attack, as this attack would be so powerful that by the time the time would once again resume, the shock wave of it would spread out far and wide, reaching even the Heart Kingdom, the Diamond Kingdom, all the kingdoms that were there, as everyone themselves can feel the large amount of magic energy, as they wonder who exactly was it. Well, those that didn't know Asta at least. But every other member that actually heard and actually felt the attack, they knew that Asta had done it. He had won. As now turning to Asta once again, we will now see him just sitting in this ginormous crater. As currently right now, we would then see what was left of Dainty, as we see that his very grimoire was now turning into nothing more but dust. As Dainty was no more, he just simply did not exist. As now with Dainty being defeated, this is when Asta would then hear a ringing on his device, as he ends up picking it up to hear from not only just Noelle, but also Yuno. As even though it took most definitely much more time than it did for Asta, Noelle and Yuno have been able to defeat their respective opponents, as Vonica as well as Zenon had been successfully defeated. Each member of the Dark Triad had went all out in their respective battles, but yet even after going all out, they still stood no chance. As now with the battle coming to an end, this is where we're now able to do a final time skip. So now flashing forward through many years by this point now, we will now turn to see the majority of the Clover Kingdom once again. As by this point now, the Clover Kingdom has evolved, as after the battle with the Spade Kingdom, they had successfully fully completed the alliance with the Heart Kingdom, as now no more animosity or really anything like that between the two kingdoms. They were now aligned. And those were not the only ones that were aligned, as also the Diamond Kingdom as well as the Spade Kingdom had also joined in on the alliance, as the Spade Kingdom had gained a new ruler, this being none other than Yuno. As unfortunately, although Yuno had tried his best, and even though he most definitely had the skills to do it, unfortunately in this timeline, Yuno did not become the Wizard King. And not only that, but thanks to the Spade Kingdom having no ruler, Yuno had no choice but to go back over there and actually help out. And it's not like he really minded at all, considering the fact that many people of the Spade Kingdom actually saw Yuno as a hero. But there was still one person that many of them still respected, to the point where they even respected him above Yuno. As turning to the Clover Kingdom, as currently right now sitting in his rightful throne and being the one to do a generous amount of paperwork, will be none other than Asta. As after so many years and after so many battles, after being the one to lead the Clover Kingdom to victory over the Spade Kingdom, and after being the main reason behind their victory, Asta had been able to successfully take the position of Wizard King. As thanks to him taking this position, not only have they grown into a time of peace, considering the fact that Asta was seen as a boogeyman for many mages, considering the fact of his many feats of strength. But not only that, but thanks to Asta being the Wizard King, we also saw that a large amount of the commoner lifestyle has changed up quite drastically, as basically people were now seeing themselves as equal. Commoners were not really seen as commoners anymore, as basically the hierarchy system was no longer the exact same way, as basically anyone can become rich. Everyone had an equal footing in life. As now that Asta had been able to successfully push himself to the absolute limit, after finally being able to defeat the elves and also the Dark Triad, and after finally giving commoners and everyone else an equal footing in life and taking down the hierarchy system, this will be the final moments of the What If, as we see Asta once again reigning the title of being the Wizard King, as he'll be highly respected and feared by many, as this will be the end to the What If series, to what if Asta has Shadow Sid's abilities. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this What If. I really hope you guys do enjoy. As now with all that being said, it's your host Seishi Samurai here, and he's signing off. Peace and have a lovely day.
Colors, switch the color, 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 colors, switch the color, switch the color. Switch the color, switch the color, switch the color.